This is step-by-step exactly how to ask for donations for your nonprofit. If you're like most fundraisers, you kind of fell into this work and maybe you didn't go to school for it. There are a few schools that offer degrees in fundraising, and some people go to college with the intent of becoming a fundraising professional later, but I think most people just kind of find their way into it, and almost all of them, what they have in common is they weren't trained how to ask for money. There's not a lot of great literature and education out there on it, and the resources that do exist are kind of hard to find and not well known. So hopefully today we'll be able to demystify some of this stuff and give you clear step-by-step instructions from the very beginning all the way to the end on how to get a donation for your nonprofit, how to actually ask for money from a private individual and getting that donation in the door. Now, we're not talking about events or online fundraising or sending something in the mail. This is specifically sitting down with a person and asking them for money, which, as we know, is by far the most effective and fast way to get any kind of revenue for your nonprofit. So to meet with someone in person, obviously step one is you have to set the meeting. First thing you need to do is actually get them to agree to sit down with you. Now, we have a whole nother video and set of videos that kind of talk about how to set up that meeting, but hopefully you're finding someone who has ability, affinity, and you have access to them. These are all great things when trying to decide who you're going to ask next and who you're actually going to sit down with to ask for a donation. But setting that meeting is so critical because we do want to have this in person. So here are some tips just to get the meeting to exist. The first thing is to be specific about your intentions. Because we're maybe a little bit afraid or a little bit apologetic about asking for money, especially when we're first starting, we're afraid that we're gonna get told no, or we're gonna make them mad or offend them. We often try to trick them into the meeting. It's like, well, let me just tell them I have some cool stuff to share, and then at the meeting itself, I'll let them know that I'm actually gonna ask them for money. What I like to do instead is to really be specific on the phone or when I set up the call about the gift. Some gift officers, some development professionals will even send a version of the gift proposal ahead in writing and say, hey, I want to talk about this opportunity, or I want to talk about this gift. Totally fine to do that. You're not going to sneak up on somebody, especially if your title is like development director or director of fundraising or director of advancement. If you have any of these fundraising-like titles as your job title and you ask someone to sit down for lunch or for dinner or for coffee, they know what the meeting is about. You're not going to sneak up on these people, especially people with maybe high wealth capacity are used to getting asked a lot. And just them taking the meeting is an indication of like, yes, I'm remotely interested in what y'all are doing. I'd like to hear your pitch. I want to hear you out or hear what opportunities you might have available. So if you're going to be a little bit sneaky about the meeting and try to set it up and, well, once I get there, I'll hit him with the switcheroo. That might work, it might not, but it's much better to know if you're gonna waste your time or theirs just by being specific on the intentions. You can be a little bit vague. You could say something like, hey, I wanna talk to you about some opportunities that we have to fund some of these programs that we have. You can talk just kind of loosely in generality or sort of saying, hey, I'm not in a position to ask you for money yet, but I'd like to share a little bit about what we're doing. That's kind of a pre-meeting if you're gonna have two kind of cultivation steps. But for the most part, you wanna be like, hey, I have some things I want to share about our upcoming campaign, maybe some opportunities and how you might be able to get involved. Would you be interested in sitting down and hearing about what we're doing? So you can set it up in a way where you're being honest and specific that, hey, this meeting is going to be about money. That way, when you get there, they feel that you're being honest and open and trustworthy, and it kind of helps build that initial human connection. So being very, very specific when you're setting that meeting. The next thing is to decide the location that is best for them. It might be most convenient for you for them to come to your office. That is probably not the place that they will be the most comfortable. We've had donor meetings at the donor's office, at the donor's home, at a coffee shop, at a restaurant, at their boardroom, at their place of work. There's no perfect answer, but the question you want to ask is, where do we feel like the donor would probably be the most comfortable? Also, if you're asking a couple, two spouses, maybe a place where they both feel comfortable, or if you feel like one of them might be the primary decision maker for some of the philanthropy in their family, want to make sure that that person is accommodated. So instead of like, how can I quickly set this up where I could get to them as easily as possible, we're as the fundraisers, we want to go out of our way a little bit to make the location work for them. They're most likely to say yes if they're in an environment where they feel relaxed and comfortable and where it's a conversation and they're not having to go to an unfamiliar environment. So even if it's just a little bit subconscious, just on a psychological level, really helps for them to feel great in the space and it to be a relaxed and calm environment. best way to do that is a place that they're already familiar with. Getting them out of their comfort zone isn't necessarily always the best way to do that. There's some exceptions to this. Some of our clients will have tours of the facility, and kind of at the end of the tour, they can take them into the CEO's office or whatever and sit down and talk about a gift. Usually goes fine because they're feeling inspired. They've seen this wonderful work that's happening. They're very hands-on with the mission all of a sudden, and that may work. But for the most part, just think about what location is best. No perfect answer, but just be intentional about selecting that location. And number 3 is decide who's the best team. This is probably one of the most important. The number one reason a donor decides to support a charity or not is who asks. It has nothing to do with the charity. Maybe it has something to do with the charity, but for the most part, the yes or no to some amount comes down to who makes the ask. The best case scenario is for when you, the development staff, or maybe the CEO or a representative of the organization specifically goes, and then someone that the donor knows, like a peer of theirs who's serving on the board, a peer of theirs who's on a volunteer fundraising committee or volunteers at the organization, or a peer of theirs who's already a donor, with the staff person of the nonprofit going to the donor. Now, the simple rule is not to outnumber the donor by more than one person. So if it's a singular donor, one person you're asking for money, you don't want to bring more than 2 people. 2 people on your team, 1 person on theirs. If they have 2 people, you're allowed to bring up to, don't have to, but no more than 3. You just don't want it to feel overwhelming. If you break this rule, say you bring your CEO and your board chair and your friend and you as the development staff go, and there's just one of them, this is no longer a conversation. This 4-to-1 ratio here, very intimidating. They're gonna feel pressure more than they're gonna feel like it's a kind of a back and forth. We don't want this to feel like a pitch or we're gonna talk you into doing this. You want them to almost have the idea themselves and feel compelled to support. So having this too large of a ratio, even 3-to-1, is not good. We wanna avoid this. So if there's 2 of them, don't bring along more than 3 total people. If there's just 1, don't bring along more than 2. These are fine. A couple of key people to have involved when you're thinking about the best team. You ideally want someone the prospect knows. That's the biggest one. Again, if you can have someone in the room who does know them, it makes a huge difference just in trust, because they don't have to fully trust your organization yet. Helpful if they do, but if you don't have a connection or you don't have a board member or a volunteer who can make that connection, that often has to be you. So if you as the fundraiser are kind of cultivating that relationship, you're building trust, you want someone that they know at least a little bit, but if there's someone who they know really well in the room, that is a much better deal. And then also ideally, someone who represents the organization. Now, many times this is the gift officer or the fundraising officer, but for larger gifts, donors really expect to talk to the boss. So if you're asking for a 6-figure, or especially if you're asking for like a 7-figure gift from a donor, they very much expect the CEO, the executive director, the board chair, someone who can speak to the vision of the organization and saying, hey, this is a big deal for us. This meeting is important enough that we brought the boss's boss to the meeting. And if they don't get to talk to the boss's boss, they're like, gosh, this 100,000 doesn't even feel that relevant or important to them if they're not going to take the time to meet with me. We already know that one of the big factors in if a charity is successful in the philanthropic space or not is just the buy-in from the leadership. We've seen this across the board with our clients. The clients that we have that do the best are the ones that have the CEOs or the executive director who are totally bought into philanthropy. They spend a lot of their own energy, the company's resources, all of it, to make sure that lane is well staffed and has a lot of attention and care. The ones that don't really struggle because you can't get access to these top people without having the CEO or somebody involved. So up to a certain dollar amount, maybe 10,000, 25,000 and under, you can get away with like a mid-level fundraiser person going and making that ask. As you get beyond that, it's not impossible, but it becomes more challenging if you don't have the person who can talk about the future vision of the organization or answer questions. Someone who reps the org also kind of acts as the person who's the knowledge bank. They might have like difficult or interesting or weird technical questions like, oh, I see you're doing this campaign, you're raising money for this, but how does that affect this? Or what is this department? Well, I heard that you're taking all of the money from the annual gifts fund and putting it towards the campaign. Where does that money come from now? So you're gonna get these weird questions occasionally. It really helps to have a representative of the organization who can speak well to that. So you want some combination of familiarity and some combination of expertise. If you can build those two kind of pieces, that is the best team. So really think about who's in the room. Again, number one reason someone gives, who asks, nail the location, and when you set up that meeting, just be honest and specific about the intentions of the call. Hey, I want to go over this today in our meeting, so they know exactly why they're showing up and kind of the goal for everybody. One quick point of clarification here, one of the things we do a lot with our clients is kind of divide people up into 3 parts of the fundraising continuum. This is borrowed from Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point. Excellent read if you haven't, but kind of the fundraising industry has borrowed this because there's 3 parts of the fundraising continuum and they require almost different skill sets. So we're gonna kind of draw this out. The first is the connector. This is the person who obviously connects you, the person who has the familiarity with not just the charity, but also with the prospective donor. This is the person who helps set the meeting. They don't just say, hey, here's a list of people to call, but specifically like, hey, I will reach out to John. I will get dinner set up for the 3 of us so that you, the foundation staff person, and me, the donor and volunteer, and also person who knows John, and John can all be in the room together. You will be the expert, I'll be the familiar person, and I'm acting as the connector in this space. So that is the first part. So as we're walking from 0 to gift along here, this is maybe more of an arrow because we're going this way with it. The first part is connecting. So that gets us about to here. So this is all connecting. Now, some people are really good at connection and not much else. And that's totally okay. And that's a great person to have on your fundraising team. If you have a board member or a volunteer who's a great connector, but they just won't ask for money, great, steer into that. Don't make them ask for money. Make them give you connections. Make them help set up meetings so that you can get in front of these folks, and then you can do the rest from there yourself. The next one is the cultivator. It's the person who is able to sit down after the connection is made and explain the why. Kind of sell the idea of the campaign, sell the idea of the nonprofit, and walk through the details, maybe tell a story. It's kind of moving the person from having just met you all the way to the point where you could make an ask. So this is the cultivation phase, takes you a little bit further down there. Again, someone who's great at storytelling or has a lot of information may not have the connections or may not want to be a good connector and kind of have natural skill sets for one or both of these. That's pretty normal. So it's important to have kind of both of these personality types on your team, but as long as you can have someone who helps fill in the gaps. So if you have a volunteer who's a great connector, maybe the staff person is a better cultivator, or vice versa. And then the last one, of course, is the closer. This is closing the gift. This is the actual making of the ask. The person who has no problem saying, hey, we'd love to have you consider a gift of $10,000. Not a natural skill set for a lot of people. People will often refuse to do this part. So the staff person often has to fill this role. If you have some version of each of these on your volunteer teams and kind of helping you with each part, no one has to be great at all 3 of these. So we have the connector, the cultivator, and the closer, and they all kind of walk us closer and closer to the gift. They can be the same person, but 9 times out of 10, you're gonna need some team to kind of help fill in the gaps of where you're weak as well. So if you find yourself getting stuck, like I'm either not getting enough prospects, or once I do get prospects, I don't know what to say, or even if I know what to say, we never make enough asks, then maybe just get some help in the areas where you're weak or where your volunteers can give you the most support. So just wanted to include that. This is all part of that set up the meeting, who should be in the room piece. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you're getting value out of this but would like something more personalized, you can book 30 minutes with one of our experts to see if you qualify for our support services. Link below in the description. All right, step 2 is the meeting itself. Once you get the person in the room, what do you do next? Well, here's what you do next. If you have a volunteer, so one of your board members or a fundraising volunteer or a donor of yours who's agreed to go with you to help get another donor, letting them talk first is huge and very, very helpful. That is the best first choice that you have. And all you want them to do is share their why, their reason for participating. Like, they have taken the time to become a donor, a volunteer, a board member, and just by them being in the room and knowing the prospect goes a long way, obviously, but have them explain their why. If they've never even talked about it out loud, you can actually get a lot out of this. You know, we sometimes will start board meetings with one person sharing their why, or sometimes we'll start orientations with everybody going around and sharing their why. Really, really important as to, hey, there's a lot of great charities out there. Why'd you pick this one? Or, hey, I'm representing this charity because I think what they're doing is great and I trust the team and I think you should get on board with this as well. So have the person who helps set the meeting, the connector, the person who knows the prospect, share their why. Just a great place to start. Somewhere in there as well is you can state the purpose of the meeting. Now, hopefully you've done this on the phone already and they kind of know, but it's a great way to restate and kind of talk through, hey, here's why we're coming in today. This is the purpose of today's lunch meeting, or why we wanted to bring you to the office. we want to have some level of pleasantries of, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend? You don't want to start right in with, all right, let's get down to business. Although maybe some business donors want to do that because they're quick on time. But most donors want to have a couple of just pleasantries to kind of get started. But you want to go pretty quickly into saying, hey, I know you're busy. And that's an easy one to say. Like, you don't have to talk about why you're busy. Just, hey, I know you're a busy person. So we'll kind of get right to why we wanted to talk to you today. So this can happen in kind of either order. You can have them share their why of why they're involved first, or you can lead with the purpose of the meeting, but you just want to state it out loud. Like, hey, leaving today, we want to have accomplished X, Y, and Z, so this is why I wanted to sit down with you. It could be as simple as saying, we're about to launch into a campaign to fund blank, blank, and blank, so I wanted to sit down and talk to you about it and see if there's something that you might want to support somewhere along the way. Great, just kind of framed it, this is why we want to talk. If there is a campaign or a project, you want to then talk about the mission. Now, a mission feels like a kind of a expansive general term, but a mission is to accomplish something. It is a before, a during, and an after. So when you talk about the mission, you should have 3 key components. The status quo, or what's going on right now. Let's say that we're an animal shelter. Right now, we are totally at capacity. We don't have enough kennels for all the stray dogs that we're taking in, and we know what happens when we get to the point where we're full and we can't take care of dogs anymore. So that's the status quo, the now. Then we have a solution. Good news though, we've identified a way where we can build out an additional 5,000 square feet with this many kennels and hire 2 additional staff people or whatever. We've identified the solution. So not only have we introduced the problem, but we've then introduced the solution. If we're able to get the solution, which by the way, costs a total of $3 million or whatever, costs an X amount of money, specific about the dollar amount. In the new future, we will have plenty of capacity in all the strays that we get based on the rolling monthly average of what we have, we can take in and make sure that we can help rehome them. So we have before, during, and after, or the problem set up and then the solution. That's our mission, is to accomplish this. So we really want to go in and saying, here's the purpose of this meeting, here's the purpose of what we do. So even if they're familiar with your work, they won't necessarily know what you're trying to work on right now, and you can in 90 seconds explain this. So this is your elevator pitch. You don't want to go too long on this. You don't want to talk 10 minutes. I would say 60 to 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes tops. You want to go through this and have this structure of like, here's the problem, here's our proposed solution and what it's going to cost, and if we are able to raise this money, this is what we're going to do. And then you kind of go from, and that's why we wanted to talk to you today. And you transition right from there. Step 3, the ask itself. So often we go to meetings, especially if we're new at this and we're nervous, and we don't actually make the ask for the money. And we get home and we go, God, that was such a great meeting. They were super excited. They were really engaged on everything that we were saying. They were dialed in and they agreed to support us. They said, I support what y'all are doing. What does that mean? Well, I don't know. They said they would support us. So that could be all kinds of that. I can't wait to see what they do next. They're actually waiting to see what you need to kind of decide what to do next. Like they're like, yeah, I support that. But if they're not gonna, sometimes they'll outright ask you like, so what do you need from me today? But if they don't do that, we want to be able to make our ask and kind of work towards, and that's why we wanted to talk to you today. So we're going to then ask them for some level of gift. So here's the way to do that. Again, be specific in the amount. If you remember nothing else from this video, I would say at least do this. Fundraisers will even try to convince us that what they do is right in this space. They'll say, I don't ever ask for a specific amount. I kind of let the donor decide that. Like it's better for them to decide. And I will argue and push back against that all day long. It is just incorrect. Any fundraiser who's been doing this a long time knows that you have to be super specific in the amount. If the amount is wrong, you have lost nothing. Like by saying, hey, we'd love to have you consider a gift of $10,000 to support the new animal shelter expansion. Say it's way too high. They might say, I'm flattered you think I can do $10,000. I could do $5,000 and I would need some time to pay that off. I would need a couple of years of installments to get to that $5,000, but I'll do a $5,000. So they'll bring you down to whatever their ceiling is, but we have to be super specific. The second thing is if you're not sure, you're gonna ask high. Just wanna really emphasize this. So if you're like, God, they could be 10, they could be 25, they could be 50. It's like, I'm just gonna take a shot. If I have no idea, I'm just gonna ask for the amount that I think is maybe one level above what I think they're capable of. And if they're like, whoa, that's way too much, we can say, hey, if you had 3 or 4 years to pay that off, would that be more comfortable? We'd love to get them into a pledge payment where we recognize them for the full amount up front and they pay it in installments of whatever interval they want, once a year, monthly, once a quarter. But we want to ask high, we want to be specific in the amount, and once the number, we'll say that's a dollar amount, is on the table, be silent. Now, this is not the sales adage where like whoever talks first loses, but as soon as you say the number, they've been waiting this whole meeting. They're like, I know they're gonna ask me for a gift. I have no idea how much, I don't know for what. You quickly explain all the different things that you're doing. You get to the point where like, this is what we need, and then you say the number. The phrase I like to use is, Mr. Smith, we'd love to have you consider a pledge, or we'd love to have you consider a gift of $50,000 to support our blank. And that's the whole sentence. And when I first started, the mistake that I would often make is I would just keep going. And I would say, but before you say no, and I would just go right back into the pitch because I was super nervous. I was super nervous about it. Very natural thing to be. Instead, just stop talking and then give them a second. As soon as you say that number, as soon as you put $10,000 on the table, they're gonna stop listening anyways. They go into kind of calculation mode. I'm like, okay, $10,000, could I afford that? Or is that reasonable based on what I've given last year to other charities? They kind of go into thinking mode. So if you keep going, they've kind of tuned you out, or at best, they're half listening. So once the dollar's on the table, that amount's on the table, you get to the ask itself, just be silent. A really easy trick is the coffee or water bottle trick. As soon as you say the number, just take a nice, long, big sip of your drink. So it looks something like this. Mr. Smith, we'd love to have you consider a gift of $10,000 to support our new animal shelter. And I'll take a full, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, where I'm not just staring into their soul, waiting for them to say something. I'm feeling less nervous because it gives me something to do with my hands. It's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. So we'll pick up your coffee or your water. You're probably in a position where you have one of those in front of you. And just take a nice long sip so that you don't have to maintain eye contact the whole time. It's super scary to do that. So you just want to take a beat, take a sip of water, and give them space to consider. That silence, we're just programmed for discomfort and silence already, but just let them sit with it. Just sit there and smile. You can just kind of fold your hands and just kind of wait, let them consider. If it goes, 30 seconds, they don't say anything, you can say, well, what questions do you have as you're considering this? But I would wait a long time before even interjecting with that. So put the number on the table, be silent, and then see where they go. If you've done this correctly, hopefully you've not given all of the details and all of the information on the project. What I mean by that is you've left some discussion on the table after the number. If you have to spend 45 minutes on your pitch, that is too much information before you get into the number. I'd rather get to the amount, the ask, within the first 5 to 10 minutes of the meeting, and then let them ask questions about what they're curious about. Spend the rest of the meeting answering the questions, asking them questions, having a discussion back and forth. Everybody at the meeting is gonna be more relaxed when the number's on the table. I know it seems like that's the scary part. Great, just get the scary part out of the way. That way everybody's cards are showing and we're like, okay, we're all in agreement that this is now what the discussion is about. If you spend 45 minutes building up to what the discussion is about, that is an incredible amount of tension that you will have a difficult time releasing toward the end. And then all the questions get crammed in the last 10 minutes, and that's not good. So get to that amount early. 5-10 minutes in, that number should be on the table. And then say you're with them for an hour, or even if you're with them for 30 minutes, you want to take the rest of the time to just have a calm discussion where everybody understands the scope of what the discussion is about. All right. Whether you get a yes, a no, or a maybe, and by the way, you'll get some version of that about a third of the time. So you'll get a yes 1/3 of the time, you get a no 1/3 of the time, and you get a maybe, which takes a lot of forms, like a not right now, or let me think about it, or can it be a less amount? It's just kind of some version of a soft yes, soft no, not one yes, one not one, either way. So obviously you're gonna get one of these 3 responses, but then there's more steps past that. Just because you've made the ask does not mean that you've finally closed it. This is like the example of, say, a car dealership. You say, okay, I'll take it. And then you just leave the car dealership without signing any paperwork or talking about the details. Just know that once you get the yes, no, or maybe, whatever their response is, and maybe it's like, hey, we need to think about this. This is a lot to consider. There are still more steps, so we're gonna talk through those now. So the most important thing in the follow-up is if you get a yes, you sign the pledge form. You get it in writing. Now, pledge forms are not legally binding. If a donor pledges to give you $10,000 and they don't give you anything, you can't take them to court. It's not a legally binding document, but it is a written agreement, and almost 100%, I think it's like 99.5% of pledges are paid in the US. So pretty good likelihood that if you get a signed pledge form, you definitely are able to then convert that into the cash received. So getting the yes, hopefully you have that pledge form with you, and maybe it's even partially filled out, depending on what you think that donor is gonna say. But if you get the yes, sign the pledge form, and you talk about payment schedule, you talk about recognition, all of it. If you get a no, you still have to be kind. Obviously, this is frustrating to get a no. You are best to ask, can we keep you posted? Because of course, no one is gonna say, no, you cannot keep me posted. I don't wanna hear from you ever again. If someone's taking a in-person meeting with you, they're at least mildly interested. You might have not had the right project, or they're saying, hey, we're not in a position to give anything at this time. Definitely hard to hear. We don't want to get that as a fundraiser, but if you do, you just follow right up with, hey, no worries. I know that your financial support has to change from year to year. Maybe there's some other charities you're supporting. You can help them justify it. Just say, can we just kind of keep you posted on our progress? Like, yeah, sure. And they just go right back into the cultivation. Cannot tell you how many times we've had a client who's gotten a no from a prospective donor early in a campaign, and then back in year 2 or year 3, the donors come back and say, hey, I want to talk more about this campaign now, or I see that you've gotten further along. Or we can even circle back with them and say, hey, can we sit down and maybe present a different opportunity for you? So no doesn't mean no forever, it just means no, not right now, or no, that's not the right fit. So we just, hey, can we keep you posted? Move on from there. If you get a maybe, or let me think about it, or I'll follow up, the only thing that you must do is set the follow-up appointment. Not like, oh, I'll circle back with you in a couple weeks. That's fine. It's not the end of the world if you're like, we'll kind of play it loose, or if they have to talk to their spouse, they have to talk to their financial advisor, they have to consider it, their business partner, they might have things to think about. I want to set a specific appointment. So I'd ask something like, would 3 weeks be enough time for you? Is 3 weeks enough for you to get with your advisor and talk about whether this is something you want to do? Great. If that is the case, I actually have my calendar here in front of me. Let's set a date so that you don't have to chase me down. Like, you're a busy person too. The phone tag trying to get the maybe to a yes is so frustrating. So get them, hopefully, unless they just outright refuse, you really want to push for setting an appointment, even if it's 4 weeks out, even if it's 6 weeks out. Like, let's get something on the calendar and then have some kind of next step. You only lose in a maybe if you don't have any next steps at all. Like, whatever that next thing is, just make sure that you have some sort of action item that's pending in the future, that's on a calendar, it's on a to-do list, so there's something. And then hopefully that's eventually turns into something. A gift, maybe? Who could say? Or if it's a no, you put them right here, can we keep you posted? And you go right back into cultivation, and then that goes right back into hopefully a yes eventually. So we're just kind of working through this system and process. But if you get that maybe, just set some kind of next appointment. Hey, what would the Thursday the 4th look like for you? Can we do 4 o'clock? Great. I'll come by your office at that time. Just give me a call if you need to reschedule. Super easy, but you get something in stone. And then you still want to send them follow-up stuff. You want to have some kind of something. We often have, if you have campaign materials, I would not hand that to them at the beginning unless you're trying to show them a rendering or something, because they're going to read that instead of listening to you. But maybe it's a nice leave behind. So if you have collateral or campaign materials or project materials, something about your fundraising, you want to hand that to them just as something for them to have, and then they can read more about when they get home. So that's the follow-up process. Obviously, you want to do what you can about logging the gift in your CRM or tracking the tax receipt, all that. But hopefully this gets you as far as getting the gift itself, all the way from having set the appointment. All right. Hopefully that was a nice in-depth walkthrough, step by step, and you have a better understanding of how to get donations for your nonprofit. If you still need more information, or if you're a little bit confused about a piece, you can either comment on the video and we'll try to respond as quickly as we can, or you can even ask us directly. You can get in touch with us by going to pridephilanthropy.com and clicking that Let's Chat button, which allows you to book some time with one of our experts so we can learn a little bit more about your organization. And again, I don't ask this very often, but we're trying to build the most comprehensive library of fundraising education materials on the internet, all for free. And all that we ask in exchange is that you just engage with our stuff. So you know the drill. You can subscribe to the channel, you can press like, you can comment, you can share the video with a friend. Whatever engagement means to you, that's all that we ask in return for sharing this. And we'll see you in the next video.